broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending the second webinar of our mini webinar series designed to inform you about emerald ash borer and the many details around management, biology, and cooperative actions associated with implementing successful plans. My name is Eric Lindberg, and I am the lead technical advisor for Rainbow Tree Care Scientific Advancements, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. A couple of housekeeping items to mention. If you have any questions, please enter those in the questions section, and I will address those at the end of the presentation. This webinar is worth 1 CEU, so if you want credit for this and have not submitted your ISA number, please send it to us along with your name and the comments, and we'll send those in at the end of the presentation. So today we have Dr. Robert Haight speaking about emerald ash borer cooperative management. Dr. Haight is a research forester for the U.S. Forest Service and has been with them since 1991, so he's carrying a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say. So with that, I'll turn things over to Dr. Haight and let him begin.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm here on the in the Northern Research Station building of the U.S. Forest Service, on the north side of the St. Paul campus of the University of Minnesota, looking north. And I know I was surprised to wake up today that it was like 2 degrees out. And I'm looking forward to winter now that I'm sort of beginning to acclimate. I'm an economist and research forester. As Eric said, I've been with the Forest Service since 1991. I grew up in California and got my PhD at Oregon State University in forest management. And then I joined the Forest Service in North Carolina and moved to the Minneapolis, St. Paul area in 1991 with my wife, and have been spending the last 10 years or so working on the economics of emerald ash borer. So let me make sure I can flip my slides here. There we go. Right, so emerald ash borer is one of the most economically and environmentally damaging non-native insects ever to reach the United States. The emerald ash borer is a wood-boring insect native to Asia, and it was accidentally introduced into the United States and North America in the early 1990s, probably in crating or pallets made from infested ash wood and used in shipping. Since its discovery near Detroit in 2002, emerald ash borer has spread to 35 states as of this summer and killed untold millions of ash trees. This map shows from the EAB website shows the counties in which emerald ash borer has been found, and you can see that it's pretty much covered the eastern U.S. since its discovery, and as a result, it's increasingly likely that EAB will functionally wipe out one of North America's most widely distributed tree genera with severe economic and ecological effects. So I've been working and studying the economics of emerald ash borer for the last 10 years. And in this talk, I want to present some of the research that I've been involved in. I'll start with information about the potential cost of emerald ash borer damage in the United States in U.S. communities over the decade from 2010 to 2020. And next, I'll discuss the benefits and costs of projects to slow ash mortality in urban forests with new infestations. And then lastly, I'll discuss analyses of the potential gains in urban forest benefits when neighboring cities cooperate in the management of emerald ash borer. I've been working with Jeff Hafner for the last 10 years on many of these problems. Jeff talked yesterday about his experience in consulting with cities, largely in the Twin Cities metro. And I know he shared some of the barriers to direct cooperation, and I can discuss those two as well at the end of the talk. Okay, let's see if I can switch. There we go. In 2010, I was part of a group that published a study estimating the cost of ash mortality over the decade 2010 to 2020. What we did is we identified communities in the path of the EAB invasion in the eastern US. We estimated ash density in those communities and computed the number of ash trees that are present. These included public ash trees along streets and in parks, as well as ash trees on private land. We built a model that projected the emerald ash borer infestation and mortality over a 10-year horizon. And finally, we calculated the present value of the cost of ash management activities, including insecticide treatment of trees to prevent the infestation, and removing and replanting trees in infested areas. Furthermore, we looked at the estimated what the loss in property value was, the temporary loss in property value associated with tree mortality in the vicinity of homes. A big part of our work was to create a simulation model of emerald ash borer spread among counties. The model was based on locations of EAB detection between 2002 and 2008 in central Michigan. And then we built the model based on those observations. We built the model to project from 2010 to 2020 as these maps indicate. By our projections by 2019, our projections between 2018 to 2020 are pretty close to the actual quarantine area in 2019, with the exception of some outliers, including the Denver, Colorado area, and central Georgia, southern Louisiana. But largely the projections we made were pretty accurate. Then, based on our projections of EAB spread and our estimates of the ash mortality associated with that spread, we predicted that over $10 billion would be spent from 2010 to 2020 in communities on ash treatment, removal, and replanting by local governments and homeowners. So the main result here is that homeowners and local governments are going to be the main bearers of the cost of emerald ash borer damage. And then, in addition, we estimated the value of the loss of ecosystem services associated with reductions in urban tree canopy associated with emerald ash borer. And we use those change in property values as an estimate of homeowners' willingness to pay for tree-related services. And here our estimates were over the 10-year period were close to $4 billion in property value losses. So this is an estimate of the aggregate willingness to pay of homeowners to protect ash trees based on the documented property value losses associated with tree loss. Now I want to shift focus to the economics of managing emerald ash borer in urban areas. SLAM, which is an acronym for slowing ash mortality, is an integrated strategy for controlling recently established EAB infestations. SLAM was developed as a collaboration among Michigan universities and federal agencies like the Forest Service. The goal of a SLAM project in a city is to slow the onset and progression of ash mortality by slowing the growth and spread of the EAB populations. SLAM management includes girdling ash trees to identify where the insects are currently living, insecticide treatment of trees to protect the trees from infestation and to kill larvae that are currently living in those trees, and tree removal within and around the infested area. Here I want to highlight two of the management options, the economics of two different management options. The first is a management option that involves systemic insecticide treatment. The insecticide is injected into the base of the trunk of the ash tree in the spring and then translocated via the xylem to canopy branches and leaves, where it kills both adult and larval EAB when emerald ash borer larvae when they consume it. Studies have shown that this insecticide treatment using emamectin benzoate provides at least 2 years of nearly 100% control of emerald ash borer within the trees. The second management option, in contrast to the treatment option, is one in which we apply no treatment and instead remove infested ash trees when they're found. And this is kind of a reactive strategy and may have a little bit of an impact on slowing the spread. So what we were interested in is what the costs and benefits of what the costs of would be of these two projects. So for this I wanted to present research by Deb McCullough and Rodrigo Mercader, two of the developers of SLAM, and they published a paper in 2012 that estimated the cost effectiveness of urban SLAM projects involving either insecticide treatment or tree removal. Here's what they did. First, they created a hypothetical suburban landscape with ash trees. This landscape had 320 city blocks with 7 ash trees per block, randomly located within each block. They developed a spatial model, a dynamic model of emerald ash borer spread through this hypothetical urban area. And then they used simulations to estimate the costs and the effects on the ash population and the EAB population under different insecticide treatment and removal strategies. And here are the key results. With no treatment, almost all of the ash trees are infested and removed within 10 years, following an initial infestation of 400 adults in the middle of the city. So the x-axis on this figure shows time, and the y-axis shows the number of trees remaining, and with no treatment, within 10 years, practically no trees remain. With a 20%, with a treatment of 20% of the ash trees selected at random for treatment each year, almost all of the ash trees are free of infestation over a 10-year horizon. This is an example of herd immunity, which essentially says that when you inoculate a proportion of a population, that together will effectively slow the population growth of EAB and protect the other ash trees in the area, even though they may not be inoculated or injected with insecticide. Although not shown in this figure, the cumulative costs of treatment were substantially lower than the costs of removing and replacing ash trees over the course of the infestation. So simply said, treating trees keeps trees alive, and keeping trees alive saves money. Now I want to move on to a project that looked at municipal cooperation in the management of the of EAB infestation. In 2012, I was part of a team that addressed this question: how much does coordination among cities for the management of EAB increase urban forest benefits? We used the Twin Cities as a case study for this analysis because the emerald ash borer infestation was recently discovered there. Well, it was discovered there in 2009 and relatively localized, and because cities were independently developing management plans and setting budgets for EAB control. So the Twin Cities Metro is characterized by many different municipalities. The infestation was discovered, and then each municipality began to act independently of each other to develop a management plan. We wanted to know, well, what would be the benefits of cooperation and sharing of resources among the different cities? So while we couldn't really experiment with this on the ground, what we did is we developed a model to estimate what the benefits of cooperation are. So we first identified a 300 square kilometer circular study area encompassing Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the surrounding communities. The study area was centered on the location of the initial EAB infestation in St. Paul, and the study area represented what we thought would be the infested area within the 10 years following discovery. We divided the study area into 5 different city groups: Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then northern and southern suburbs. And then we developed a model of EAB spread and used the model to evaluate 3 different management strategies. The first strategy is no action, and that is where all 5 cities remove ash trees only when they become infested. The second strategy is called local management, and here we assumed that each of the 5 cities had different budgets for ash treatment and removal, and each city group spends its funding to maximize its benefits within its own boundaries. So in 2011, when we performed this study, St. Paul projected to spend about almost $4 million over 5 years. Roseville was going to spend about $100,000, and the other cities weren't planning to spend anything. The third strategy is called aggregated management, and here we assumed that all the funding available in 2011 was pooled and and spent within the study area to maximize the benefits of ash EAB management across all of the cities in the study area. So this would be a scenario that assumes total cooperation among the different cities and the sharing of resources across those cities. And here's this bar graph shows our main findings. So with no action, most of the ash in the study area became infested within 5 years and resulted in a loss of net forest benefits of about $300,000. That's the red bar. The blue bar shows that with each city managing according to their local budget, the outcome isn't as bad, but there's still a net loss of forest benefits of, within the study area of about $150,000. And then if the cities aggregated their budgets and coordinated management, then the urban forest benefits would more than double relative to a strategy in which the cities acted independently, with a net present value of forest benefits of over $200,000. So what we concluded is that, and at least showed with our simulation model and analysis, is that a regional management and funding strategy would more effectively control the infestation than an inconsistent city-by-city response or no action. We also modeled two versions of the aggregated management strategy. One of those strategies assumed that 30% of the ash, only 30% of the ash trees in the study area would be available for treatment and control. And this represents the population of public ash trees. The second option is that 100% of the ash trees would be available for treatment and removal, and that represented the population of ash trees on both public and private land. So for the case where 100% of the ash trees are available for treatment, almost 90% of those ash trees remain after 5 years. That's the blue bar on the right of the histogram, where we're looking at the percent representing the percent of the ash trees remaining. The net benefits of this treatment and removal strategy were over $100 million, over $1 million, almost twice as much as a strategy in which only 30% of the trees were available, representing the public trees, whose net benefits were about $220,000, and then the no action strategy results in only about 20% of the ash trees remaining. So the take-home message from this is that treatment and removal of ash trees on both public and private land will likely give the most benefit, and in addition to cooperative management within the study area, is likely to give the highest forest benefits. Okay, the last study has to do with a mechanism for cooperation. So the previous study showed that cooperation among cities had the potential to improve overall management. However, that study didn't address the mechanism by which cooperation and budget sharing could take place. So in this study with my colleagues, Kelly Coburn and Greg Amaker at Virginia Tech, we investigated whether a bargaining mechanism could work for cooperation among cities in the management of EAB. So here's what we did: is we used Minneapolis and St. Paul as an example and formulated a two-city model. One city was infested, that represents St. Paul, and the other is not, representing Minneapolis. And this is a situation that occurred at when EAB was first discovered in 2009. So at that point, St. Paul could invest in controls such as ash treatment and removal, and those controls cost money and also slow tree mortality and the loss of benefits within the city of St. Paul. And these actions, in addition, reduce the probability of spread to Minneapolis, which in turn reduces the expected control costs, mortality, and loss of benefits in Minneapolis. So that there's two kinds of benefits associated with St. Paul managing its EAB population. First, it preserves the ash tree canopy, slows the spread within the city of St. Paul, and thereby increases benefits within that city. In addition, it slows the spread to the city of Minneapolis, which in turn reduces the potential costs or delays the potential costs of managing EAB within that city. So the city of Minneapolis could possibly increase its benefits by helping St. Paul slow the spread of emerald ash borer, and it could do that by offering a transfer payment to the city of St. Paul to increase control, which reduces the probability of spread. But it probably would reduce the ash tree canopy because it would involve more tree removal and reduce the benefits of St. Paul. So the transfer payment would benefit both communities if, from the standpoint of St. Paul, the transfer payment more than compensated for its increased control costs and loss of benefits. And from the standpoint of Minneapolis, the transfer payment is less than the gains in expected benefits it receives from the additional reduction in the probability of spread. So we set up a model that represents this bargaining framework in which both communities seek the transfer payment over time that maximized its own benefits relative to no cooperation. And for this Twin Cities case, we found that transfer payments from Minneapolis to St. Paul in the order of $100,000 to $300,000 per year over a 10-year horizon would substantially reduce the likelihood of spread of EAB from St. Paul to Minneapolis, and in addition, increase the net benefits in both St. Paul and Minneapolis relative to the no cooperation alternative. So that would be this is a hypothetical analysis of the potential gains from cooperation. Of course, that didn't happen in reality because both cities became infested rapidly, and each city decided to take a different approach. St. Paul's approach to managing EAB involved both strategic treatment of ash trees, large, beautiful ash trees, along with removals, whereas Minneapolis took an approach of having a staged removal of all of its ash trees, regardless of their likelihood of infestation. Okay, So here's the summary of the important results. EAB, let's see, the emerald ash borer infestation in the eastern U.S. is expected to cost billions of dollars in treatment and removal, and property value loss in the coming years. And households and local governments will shoulder these costs. 2, in cities with new emerald ash borer infestations, management strategies that involve insecticide treatment can protect ash trees, slow EAB spread, and lower the costs, lower management costs relative to strategies that rely only on tree removal. And lastly, cooperation of cities to control EAB can substantially improve net benefits of urban forests. And bargaining as a mechanism of bargaining for transfer payments between the cities is an efficient mechanism for cities to cooperate. Okay, so those are my main messages, and now I'm going to turn the mic back over to Eric to moderate questions.
Thank you, Dr. Haight, for that presentation. If anyone has any questions, please enter them into the question box, and we'll be looking over those now and reading those off. Looks like we have one question in here from John, saying, when you say 20% treatment, does that mean 20% treatment annually or just 20% every 2 years?
Right. That was a 20% treatment annually. So in Deb's simulation model, she randomly selected from the untreated tree population 20% of those and treated them and did that annually. Does that capture what you asked?
Perfect. All right, next question. How do you broach the transfer payments with cities notoriously staying within their respective territories?
Right. That is a difficult problem. I would start by saying that many cities already cooperate in terms of emergency services and transfer. Well, I would just give an example of cooperation in terms of emergency services. In my community, Falcon Heights, we contract for our emergency services with County of Roseville, the county of with Ramsey County. So it's not out of the ordinary for communities to share resources, but what it takes is negotiation and with the idea, and it takes negotiation, and it also takes a knowledge of the potential benefits from that cooperation. So, for example, in Falcon Heights, it would be extremely costly for us here to create a police force and with detectives and infrastructure and everything else, compared to borrowing or basically contracting with a much larger force like Ramsey County Sheriffs to provide those services for us. And it would be a similar situation for neighboring cities. Now, I think one of the things that impressed me about Jeff Hafner's work, and I wasn't on his talk yesterday, but I've heard him speak before. But one of the things that he does is creates a template for EAB preparedness and management, and then presents that to the cities, and if they adopt it, it would be a way to go forward with their management. And if he can go from one city to a neighboring city and say, hey, look, you know, Burnsville has adopted this approach, and here are the benefits of this approach. I think you would also benefit from this approach. Then, and furthermore, if you share information about where emerald ash borer is located and things like that, then you would both be better off. So that's kind of a long-winded statement, but I think the first step in broaching the potential for cooperation is to talk about the benefits of cooperating, and that could be the stepping off point for negotiation.
Perfect. Next question that we have is from Jen. Jen want to know, how soon should we start treating our ash for the potential of infestation of EAB in Montana?
You know, I don't really know the answer to that, and because I don't know what the situation is in your state. However, let me think if I switch the question around and say, if I'm in a neighborhood that if my neighborhood currently does not have emerald ash borer known to be in its trees, but I know that there's an infestation, say 10 or 15 miles away, how should I decide if I want to treat my trees or not? And I think that if I'm a city forester, I would begin to I begin by mapping the trees, so I know where the ash trees are located. You know, especially city and park trees. I would also identify trees, ash trees that are of low quality in terms of their health, and begin to remove those trees. And lastly, I would visually inspect the high quality trees for signs of, well, here it would be woodpecker damage and other signs that suggest that EAB might be present. And then I would keep really close tabs on where emerald ash borer is throughout the city, and then begin, and when it gets like less than about 5 miles away or so, then begin to in a treatment program to protect the high quality ash trees that you want to have living in your community. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And actually, I'll be hitting on a little bit of that at the webinar tomorrow. So
oh, good.
If you're interested, stay tuned.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. You can, I know you have a lot more expertise in the practical management aspects than I have, but I know that that's sort of roughly what I've heard, and then what I hear from my local arborists.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. And we have another question. Would the net benefit to the urban forest be increased with different treatment/control options?
Yes. So if the question is, would the net benefits of treatment and control options increase net forest benefits? And yes, that it would increase net forest benefits compared to doing nothing, or compared to staged removals of all of the remaining ash trees. So let me say that again. So if you have 3 strategies, one is a treatment and removal strategy. The second is a staged removal strategy of all the ash trees. And the third is doing nothing and only removing trees when they become infested. The strategy that uses treatment and removal if infested is going to have higher net benefits to the urban forest compared to those other 2 strategies. And the reason is twofold. One is that trees have value when they're standing and they're beautiful because it maintains the leafy character of the neighborhood, and people are willing to pay for that in terms of higher property values. Second of all, the treatment action is relatively cheap in comparison to tree removals. So those are the 2 main economic factors that are in play that make the treatment and removal strategy more cost effective or have higher net benefits than staged removal, which is very expensive in terms of removing all of the trees. Furthermore, it reduces or eliminates, it reduces the urban tree canopy, which lowers the leafy quality of the neighborhood. Okay, what else?
Thank you. Looks like that's all the questions that have come through. And additionally, with treatment options and whatnot, that's something I'll be covering pretty extensively in our next webinar tomorrow, which is going to be more of a broad, general emerald ash borer presentation that will focus on some of the biology as well as some of the management options associated with treating the pest. But want to thank Dr. Haight for making yourself available to do this presentation. I think it was a really informative information. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get those over. With that, we'll go ahead and conclude this webinar. Thank you, Dr. Haight, for your participation in this, and thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. It was a pleasure. Take care.